Okay, looking at here, it's 2010 higher level question, and it's a perspective question. So this comes up under your projection systems. Really, you'll see a perspective question coming up or an axonometric. They're both one and the same topic, so one of either could be very likely to come up in any leaving cert exam at higher level. Perspective is quite straightforward, very repetitive what comes up. In this case, it's based on a stand from a football stadium. They're based on the Aviva Stadium, loosely, and you're given the plan view and the elevation of the stand, the portion of stand they're concentrating on. The first part of the question is asking you to draw the given plan view, part A. Quite straightforward, there shouldn't be any difficulty there. So heavy outline, you're looking straight down on it, and broken lines indicating hidden detail that you can't see. So that would be the side of the stand, the steps, all that kind of stuff. So the plan view, not really any issue there. Now, the details of the actual perspective question. They want you to draw a perspective drawing of the structure, and they give the following details. The spectator point is 1.8 meters from the corner A. Corner A in this case is touching the bottom right hand corner of the stand here. That's quite useful, and you'll understand why in a moment. The picture plane is touching corner A, so we'll go through that as well. And finally, the horizon line is 2 meters above the ground line, and again, this will all make sense in a moment. One important note they ask for is they want you to use auxiliary vanishing points to locate the sloping edges on the roof. You can actually technically answer the question without using auxiliary vanishing points, and that's the case for most perspective drawings. But when they specifically ask you to use auxiliary vanishing points, there will be marks going for it, so try and get into the habit of using them. So I've produced the plan view already. Again, there shouldn't be any difficulty there. And I've marked off corner A, which is touching the very bottom right hand corner of that plan view. Now in the question, there's a scale used of 1:20, so any measurements that are on the elevation or on the exam script, you're going to be reducing that by 20 down to scale. So they mention it's 1.8 meters to your spectator, and it's at an angle of 45 degrees. This is all given to you in the question. So from corner A, I'm going to draw an angle down of 45 degrees, and my spectator is somewhere along that view. So that's basically where the spectator is the person that's looking at the object. That's where they're standing. 1.8 meters, when you divide by 20 in millimeters, is going to go down to 90. So 90 mil away from corner A at an angle of 45 is my spectator, and I label that as S. Now once you find your spectator, the next point, or the next thing to find, is your picture plane. Your picture plane is basically the image of this, or the page that you have in front of your object. That's what you're going to see. You translate it onto your picture plane. To draw the picture plane, there's a very, very straightforward method. From the spectator, you look to the extreme right and the extreme left of the object that you're looking at. So you imagine yourself standing here at the spectator, looking straight at the plan view. Your extreme right will be up to this corner. Your extreme left will be over to this side. That creates an angle between those two lines. You bisect that angle. So use your compass to do that. And when that angle is bisected, you go perpendicular to the bisecting line from whatever point of reference you're given. In this case, corner A. You're told your picture plane is touching corner A. So I'll just go over that heavy just so it stands out clearly on the video. Your picture plane touching corner A, perpendicular to that bisecting line that I just created. That's the initial setup. Now any other planes that you set up are going to be parallel to that. So when we set up our horizon line or our ground line, they're at the same angle as that picture plane. Label everything, just makes it a lot easier for an examiner to give you marks. Now that's going to be at a strange angle, so if you have an adjustable set square, it's going to help you. And the next stage of the question would be to draw your ground line. And your ground line can be drawn anywhere on the sheet, but to give yourself space, you try and draw it as low down as possible within a workable area. So I'm going to bring it down as far as I can down the page. Somewhere around here will be perfect. The ground line will be a construction line, and I'll label it as GL. So everything from that point is now going to build upwards. That's why I went down so far to leave space. The next bit of information in the question given is that the horizon line is 2 meters above the ground line. So we'll divide by 20 once again. That's going to mean there's a distance of 100 mil between them. And once again, the horizon line is going to be parallel to all the other lines that have been drawn. And we label that HL. So that's the setup of the question done. Now we can actually begin drawing our perspective drawing of this stand. The first point you're going to start from is the one that's touching your picture plane, and that's corner A. So we're going to bring that straight down to where our perspective drawing is going to be. The angle it's going to come down at is the angle of that perpendicular line that I created. Okay, I bring it down as far as the ground line, and that's corner A. Touching the ground, and that's my start point for my perspective. The next thing I need to do is to create vanishing points, because from that corner it's going to go off towards the right and the left. So I need vanishing points. To create vanishing points, again, it's quite straightforward. What you do is you look at the plan view and you look at what direction the lines are going in. And what I mean by that is this plan view is made up of lines which are going vertically upwards and lines which are going horizontally across like that. So they're the two directions my vanishing points are going to come from. And I draw my vanishing points from the spectator. So I go to the spectator and I draw a line going straight up, and that's to match up with those lines there. And likewise I draw a line going across horizontally, and again that's to match up with the lines here in the plan view. So there are my two vanishing points, and I draw them until they hit the picture plane. Once they hit the picture plane, I can drop them down at the same angle as everything else as far as my horizon line. And that's where they're going to be located for my use in the perspective drawing. So VP 1 and 2, you can label them. And everything that I draw which is flat lines is going to vanish off towards those, depending whether it's going left or right. So I'll start this off from corner A. Just to get some sort of a shape on this, I'll draw a baseline going over to the left and a baseline going over to the right. Okay. Now, what you need to do is you need to track the same line in your original plan view. So let's say this baseline going along from corner A out towards the right would be the same line here. That's the end point of it. So when I look at it from my spectator, it cuts through my picture plane at that point there. So when I drop that down, that's where my line is going to stop at that point. Okay, so that first little bit can go in heavy now, and it helps just to get that first bit done because it puts a bit of shape on the drawing. Likewise, this line is disappearing off to the left, so that signifies this line here in plan view. Looking at that corner straight from the spectator, it cuts the picture plane at that point there. So if I drop it down, that's where that line drops. Okay. Now, you can see from the question that the stand is made up of a series of steps, and you can see that from the elevation. So I'm now going to begin putting some of those in place. In order to bring down any heights down to your perspective drawing, you need what's called a height line. And the height line is something where you can take the actual measurements you have and mark them off down the perspective drawing. Ideally, you want your height line to be touching your picture plane. So in this case, corner A is going to act as my height line. The reason you can use the real measurements at corner A is because corner A is actually touching the picture plane. So everything behind the picture plane is going to have perspective applied to it. But because corner A isn't behind the picture plane, it's in contact with it, it doesn't have any perspective applied to it, so you can use real measurements. So in that case, I'm going to measure up each time along corner A, regardless where the measurement is for. It's going to be measured on corner A and then brought off to the vanishing points to find the different locations of it. So the steps in this drawing go up in measurements of 200. Again, I divide that by 20. So I'm going to get measurements of 10 mil on my scaled drawing. I'll mark off the 3 steps in the one go. So I'm going to go up 10, 10 and 10. They're all going to go off to the vanishing point on the left hand side. Now what I just need to know is where do this each stop. So I can see the first step is going to go from corner A to there. The second step, the next, and the third step is the longer one there. So I just draw each of those points to my spectator, see where it cuts the picture plane, and then drop them down to their respective heights. So just take your time with this, double check everything. And the next one. And finally. Okay. So again, I'll start just putting in some lines heavy, just to keep a bit of shape on this. And then those can go across to the other vanishing point because they're going to cut across towards the right. Okay. So they're all vanishing off towards the vanishing point over here. I know where to stop because I've already marked it off on the base here, so I can just bring that straight up. Okay. And if you look at the drawing itself, you can see that there's a kind of an upright piece here on the far right hand side, so the steps actually stop just slightly before that. Looking at the plan view, this will be where the steps stop as they're coming over from corner A. They go over as far as there, and then this column will be the piece that I just referenced there. So we will draw that from our spectator. And drop it down to where the perspective is. Okay, so once again, begin drawing some of these lines heavy. Any lines going over towards here will always go towards the vanishing point. I'll just go over that heavy, it's easier to see. Okay. Now, I'm just going to reference back to the elevation just to take some heights. So, I have the steps complete in my perspective. The next thing I'm going to concentrate on is this column here. So I can see it as a height of 600 in total up to that front point there. So I'm going to mark that off, divided by 20, that will be a measurement of 30. Like I said, any height I'm going to mark off, I'm going to mark it on my height line, corner A, because that's touching the picture plane. So I marked off the height 30 there, bring it back over towards the vanishing point. And what that does is it gives me where that column stops at the front. Okay, so that's that first bit done. Now if you're looking at the back of it, it's level with that height there of 1200. So if I get a height of, divide that by 20, it'd be 60. Mark it on the height line and bring it back to the vanishing point. That's going to give me the back here. And I can cut that across to my vanishing point on the other side. And then it's just a case of joining points together. Keep it light for now because there's a roof structure going over this. I'm just not sure if it'll cover it or not. Any points you're unsure of, like for instance the very back of this column here, well, that's going to be it there. So again, join the spectator to it, cuts the picture plane, and drop it down. Okay, so that'll be that back column. Not sure if you can pick it up or not. I'll draw it in heavy and we're finished. I just won't draw it heavy now because there is a roof structure going over this and I'm not sure if it'll cover it or not. Now, the roof structure. It does ask for auxiliary vanishing points in order to locate it. So you can see from the elevation the roof structure is at a pitch of 30 degrees. Once you know the degrees of it, it's quite easy to find the auxiliary vanishing points. So what you need to do is go to your spectator. And at your spectator, you originally drew a horizontal line to find your first vanishing point. What you're going to do now is you're going to draw a 30-degree angle based off that line. So go to the spectator again. In this case, it happens to be flat, so it's easy just to put a 30-degree set square against your t-square. If, for any case, that happened to be at an angle, if your plan view was slightly twisted to one side, you would gauge to 30 degrees off the angle, but in this case it's flat, so you can just do a 30-degree angle like so. Okay, I might just do that as a broken line. You wouldn't draw it heavy in an exam, but it's just so you know what I'm talking about on the video. So that broken line that I've just put in heavy, that's a 30-degree angle. And what I want to find out is the height between the vanishing point and that 30-degree angle as it's coming up. So a vertical height between them. And when I get that height, I'm going to take it with the compass and I'm going to bring it down to where my perspective drawing is. The same vanishing point is located here, so that's where it came from. So I take that height and I mark it up here. That's an auxiliary vanishing point. And that's how you find them. You might need one on the other side. It's going to be the same height, so you can mark it up on that side as well. And we call that auxiliary VP2. Now, that's if the angle that we're trying to draw is going that way, which it is in this case. Okay, so when I go to the corner of the roof, I'm going to draw a line up to the auxiliary, and that's going to represent a 30-degree angle in real life, but obviously it's quite skewed because it's a perspective drawing. You might have to mark the auxiliary vanishing point downwards sometimes, and again you just kind of have to judge what way are the lines going. So if you were, for instance, drawing an angle going up like that, you would measure down instead of measuring up, but the procedure is exactly the same. So you can see my auxiliary vanishing point, that height was taken from here, and I've drawn both points up towards it, and that's the 30-degree angle that the roof is making. Now the roof goes from the back of the stand to the very front of the stand, which is the same point as corner A. So when that drops down, that's how I know where the roof stops. So I can draw that part heavy. And that will complete the side of the stand. Then the stand is just going to come straight across, so that means it just go to a normal vanishing point, because the line coming across is not at 30 degrees, it's a horizontal line. It happens to be up in the air because it's attached onto a stand, but it's a horizontal line, so that means it's just going to go to my normal vanishing point. And again, it'll continue out to the vanishing point till it disappears. But as we know, the stand is only that width, so that's where it'll stop. I have that line drawn already to my spectator. That's where it cuts the picture plane. It was dropped down already, so I'm just going over the same line again. So that's how I know where the stand stops. Okay, so that'll be that part of it complete. And then just to finish off the inside of the stand, I know it has to come down from this point to join into these bits that are already made. It's also a 30-degree angle coming down. If it's a 30-degree angle going up, it's going to be 30 degrees going down. So you could, in essence, create an auxiliary point down here, which I was talking about earlier on, using the same distance. Or you could just join the points together. So that's auxiliary vanishing point 3. And either way should give you the same result, which it does. And that's perspective. So you go over your drawing, you make sure you have everything clearly labelled, the picture plane, the horizon and ground lines, the vanishing points, the auxiliary vanishing points. When you're asked for auxiliary vanishing points, don't presume that the examiner will find all of this construction work that you've done with the 30 degrees and the height, that they'll find it in the midst of 1,000 lines. So just maybe mark off the height that you used and reference it down here. That's where that came from. Perhaps mark these lines as all being parallel to each other. Make sure everything is clearly labelled, and make sure your outline drawing then has gone over heavy and there's no mistakes there. And that's 2010 higher level perspective drawing.